1. Boom. And we are live. I am joined by Dean Thomas. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So first of all, like I was just telling you off air, you're an extremely smart guy, huge personality. I love talking with people like that. Pick your brain. But first off, how are you? How's the family? This is a strange time with the coronavirus. Is everything okay on your end?
Yeah, it's crazy though, man, because my life hasn't really changed all that much because I'm
Okay.
still kind of because I do a radio show as well, and
Yeah.
we're still on air right now, and I still have a couple of fighters that I am working with. Don't tell nobody, but I'm still working with a couple of guys on the low. But
Okay.
but my life hasn't really changed all that much. But it's been kind of better now because we got traffic is a lot less,
Right.
and yeah, there's not a lot of people out getting in my way. So
Right.
despite there being a pandemic going on, I'm trying to look at the positives and be very optimistic about what's going on.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad the fam's doing well. I'm glad your life hasn't really changed that much. I know for what I do, I'm still attending college, so things have changed a little bit. But as far as the podcast, as far as the radio business and being on the radio in the mornings, nothing's changed there. So we're very fortunate on that end. All that being said, I think this has given everyone a moment to focus on some different things in their life that they may not have been able to take in that time and really focus on. And I think a lot of people, because we don't have sports, right? The basketball is canceled right now. All these seasons are pushed back. It's allowed people to kind of reflect, and you see like ESPN, you see Bleacher Report giving out their best highlights in the past. So that being said, this is how I wanted to start off the show with you. Off script, we didn't go over this. You're a former fighter, professional fighter, top of the food chain, UFC. You're a coach. So you have tons of memories, tons of moments. All that being said, what is your favorite moment inside the octagon for you as a fighter?
For me as a fighter,
Yeah.
see, this sucks too because, and I have to say that because it happened so early in my career that I wish it happened a little later because,
Okay.
but I really have to say when I beat Jens Pulver back in the year was like 2000. It's like
Okay.
20 years ago, and I remember that euphoric feeling that I had when I won that fight. I don't know if I've ever had that feeling again, or I know I have never surpassed that feeling, but that's definitely the moment when I won that was the best feeling I've ever had as a fighter.
Now, why that particular fight? Is it the magnitude of the fight? Was the person you were fighting, Jens Pulver, was elite? Was it something in that fight that happened? What makes that stand out to you the most?
Well, he was elite. I mean, he was the number one guy in the world. Like he was the guy because he had fought in the UFC. This was
Right.
before he won. This was before he had won the belt though. But he had
Okay.
fought in the UFC. He had beaten a bunch of guys, and he was the guy. I don't think I was expected to win. Nobody really knew who I was at the time. So
Right.
this was the fight that like not only put me on the map, but it let me know that I was at that level too. That I was one of the top guys in the world too.
Right. Now, you're one of the few people who, like Steve Kerr is one of the people that stand out to me, right? He's on the Chicago Bulls. He was a fantastic player, won championships. Then he was able to become a commentator, was a fantastic commentator, a great personality. Then he becomes a coach. He's a great coach. And then he also was involved in the front office. He was great at that. So he's one of the like rare people that stick out to me that has evolved and adapted to every position he's done in life and thrived. You're one of those people for me because you're an excellent fighter. You're a phenomenal coach, and you're also a personality. And you do great. You do exceptional work in all three areas of that. So for you now as a coach, what's your favorite memory as a coach?
It would have to be when Tyron Woodley won the belt.
Really?
Yeah, when he won the belt, I remember thinking, I remember thinking to myself like, "Am I going to cry right now?" I was in the cage thinking, "Am I going to cry right now? This is crazy." But
Right.
yeah, that had to be it because as a fighter, we always want to win the belt. That's why we fight. You want to win the belt. Like
Of course.
at some point in your career, that's what it is. Sometimes it's just you need the money, but
Right.
at some point in your career, you want the belt. And I never achieved that as a fighter. So for Tyron to win that belt, and to me to stand in the cage and watch him wrap around his waist, and to know all the work that we put into it,
Right.
it felt as though. And he shared. And the one thing I say about Tyron is he shared that moment with all of us, and he shared that belt with all of us. He got us
That's
all replicas. He got us all replicas of that belt. So
wow.
everybody in his team. So he shared that with us. So it almost felt as though I won a belt myself. So like that's
Right.
my favorite moment.
Now, I wouldn't have judged you if you cried, by the way. I would have
No,
understood.
listen. I'm not afraid to. I'm not afraid to. But it didn't come out at the moment.
Right. Now, people forget too when he won that belt, it was against Robbie Lawler, right? And now Robbie Lawler was at his peak. He was destroying dudes left and right. And Tyron Woodley went out there and blasted him. So it's not even like he just won the belt. He did it in spectacular fashion as well. So that was an amazing performance by Woodley for sure.
Yeah, and that's what we train to do. That's the thing with fighters as a coach. You train the fighters to do something, and sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't, sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. But as a
Right.
coach, all I care about is that they fight the way we train. And he did what we trained to do. So I was proud of him for that.
Okay. I only have three more questions when it comes to reminiscing your favorite memories.
Okay.
Now, as someone, now you just shared your favorite moment as a fighter, as a coach. Now you're also on Looking for a Fight with Dana White. You guys do tons of fun stuff. I love watching it. It's just pure entertainment when it comes to the foods or the activities or just even watching you guys evaluate young talent. For you, with Matt, Sarah, and Dana White, who are personalities of their own, so all three of you guys really just click and feed off of each other. What's your favorite memory with them so far recording with the shows?
Um, so this is kind of weird for me because I think my favorite memory is probably the most fear I've ever had in my entire life, and that was
Okay.
swimming with the sharks.
Okay.
That was absolutely like I think back to doing that and going like, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? But I just remember being in the water with those guys and just being fearful of my life, and it was so scary. But it's probably looking back, it's probably still a good thing that I allowed myself to get to that type of point and out of my comfort zone. Like because we never really do that. We never allow ourselves to get that far out of our comfort zone. I mean,
Right.
it's one thing to tuck your tail between your legs and talk to the girl at the bar, and it's another thing to
Right.
get in the water with
Right.
sharks when you can't swim.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's okay to take an L at the bar, but if you take an L
yeah,
in nature, you're dead.
yeah. So that's probably my favorite moment, and you get to really see how vulnerable we are as humans. Like when you see Matt go, "Get me the hell out of here," and you see Dana like, "No, I'm not going in." So like it's a very strong bonding moment between us three.
Right. That's incredible. Yeah, I remember actually watching that episode. I'm like, man, so what happens? Is it like in Practical Jokers where like, is there like a hidden contract where what if you don't want to do it? Like, what if you're like, you know what? I can't overcome that fear. I can't jump in with some sharks.
That's the thing with me is that prior to every shoot we do, I tell myself there's nothing I'm not going to do, and
Okay.
I really have to work myself up because there's things that like I would never do if it wasn't for that show. But
Right.
when it comes to the show, there's nothing that I won't do. So, and Dana knows that about me. So, like,
Hmm.
I'm like, if y'all want me to do, I'm going to do it because I work myself up to that. I mean, we
Right.
can jump out of a plane, we can do whatever. I'm going to do it.
Wow. All right. Make sure he doesn't hear that because he may make you do something just ridiculous now.
I know he is, but I've already told him I will.
Okay.
I already told. Well, it's my job. Like that's the reason why they got me on the job is because
Right.
I'll do dumb things. So, I can't not do my job.
Right, right. So now for you, I think people don't understand how unique MMA is. It's such an extreme sport. Something Dana White always talks about is like if you're in a neighborhood, you have a basketball game, football game, but then a fight breaks out, everybody's going to rush and watch that fight. It's just in our DNA. It's just really we think about the Coliseum days, the gladiators. It's just in our DNA to we're attracted to that. Now, some people may not want to partake in that, but we're attracted to see what happens. What's that outcome? So, what was the day where Dean Thomas is sitting there and says, "I want to do that. I want to do MMA because it's such an extreme thing to do. It requires tons of courage and bravery." So, what was that moment for you? What fight was it that you watched that clicked in your brain where I want to do MMA?
Well, like times are different now because like how you're a young man, so like
Yes,
you
sir.
don't know, so you weren't around the evolution of it. So like right now, you can
I
watch a
did
UFC
though.
fight. Well,
I
you probably do know the evolution, but to live through it, it's a little different than like to go back and remember the history.
right,
But like now, you can watch a fight and go, "I want to do that" because there's this gym down the street that does that, and I know guys that fight. But back then, it wasn't that way.
right.
Back then there was no opportunities for us. So there was never a time where I thought this is what I want to do
Okay,
because there were no opportunities. I just remember training because I didn't want to get beat up in the street. I thought what
Okay.
Hoist Gracie did was the coolest thing in the world. I said, if you're that, because I'm small, I said, if you're that small and you can beat up big people, I have to learn how to do that. And
Right.
then these small like opportunities, like these little local events would come around to do like these little tournaments. So I go,
Hmm.
oh, tournament! I can test myself against another person who does this. So let me
Right.
try. And then next thing I know, then they started to pop up here and there. So I was like, another one, let's do another one. And then
Okay.
another one. So like that was never really a point until like I was, you know, after the comeback season of the Ultimate Fighter, where I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But
Okay.
prior to that, it was like, you mean I can fight in Japan? What? Are you serious? There's an opportunity for me? Yeah, I remember going to UFC in Alabama thinking one day I would love to fight in front of a crowd like this, but I never
Right.
thought it would happen because I never thought that a small guy like me would get the opportunity.
Hmm. And now, did you know right away, like, oh, wait, I'm actually pretty good at this too? Like, not only am I practicing, but I'm beating guys up. Like, did
Yeah,
that click too?
and I don't mean to be arrogant about it, but I've always kind of felt like that. Like when I
Oh,
first started and just training with guys, and I always felt like I remember going to a seminar with Hoist Gracie in Jacksonville, Florida, and at the end of the
wow.
seminar, he let us roll with guys, and I remember I didn't have a gi, I didn't have a belt, and I was going up against blue belts, and I was just like mauling these guys, just like they're just
Wow.
natural ability. Yeah, so I've
So,
always felt like I was pretty good.
okay, now that I just have to ask this question as a coach, there's just some people just naturally have that then, right? Like, of course, you need to work at it. You need to be dedicated. You have to have that discipline. But there's just some guys that walk in that gym, like, okay, yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, there are some that are like that, but that doesn't necessarily always translate over to success
Right.
because they might have it physically but don't have it mentally. They might
Okay.
have it physically but don't have the discipline to stay,
Right.
to train. So I'm not really all that impressed with guys that have that it factor physically. What
Okay.
impressed me are those that have that it factor in terms of like discipline,
Right.
following directions, being able to be a good teammate, things like that are
Yeah.
more impressive and important to me in terms of in the room than just having that it factor physically.
Right. Now, I obviously was never reached the status that you have in this sport. I don't know nearly as much as you do, but one of the first things I ever did was I'd been training MMA since I was 4 years old. I'm 22 now, and I've been doing it my whole life. And then I stopped and I fell in love with basketball. And I'm like, man, I'm not getting hit in the face anymore. But one thing I noticed was people see it as one man in the octagon, well, technically two people in the octagon, but you're on that stage by yourself. So they think it's just a one man sport, but really MMA is more of a team sport than any other sport because it's who you surround yourself with. It's the coaching. And back to your point, you got to be able to take that type of criticism. You have to be able to be coachable. And I think some people really, I mean, not everyone's a hardcore MMA fan. So those that are probably understand that. But for the general public, MMA, it's crucial to surround yourself with people like yourself. And back to what you were saying, MMA is a huge team sport.
It is a huge team sport, but there are a lot of like perceptions, false perceptions of what MMA is. A lot of people think MMA is just, if I just get in shape, then I
Right,
can fight. Yeah, that's what most people think. Oh, I'm good enough on my feet because I can throw a punch,
right.
or I'm a good athlete, so I'm going to be good at this. But those are false. It's not true.
Yeah,
But people think that if I just get in shape, I just need somebody to get me in shape, that I can go out there and beat up anybody in the world. That's not true because,
nope,
like you said, it's a team effort behind the scenes. Like
right.
it's who you surround yourself with, who's going to work with you,
Hmm.
having good partners, good training partners, like all that stuff is important if you're going to be successful in this game.
Right. Okay, so now I want to transition to this. Right now, I think UFC is like the fastest. Well, MMA. And I'm not. Let me not just say UFC. MMA is the fastest growing sport. It seems like it's becoming more global. More like you said, more gyms are opening up. More people want to learn how to defend themselves. So it's already got that momentum going from, and all the stars return. You got like Amanda Nunes. You have Conor McGregor back. You have Khabib Nurmagomedov. You have Dustin Poirier's. Like you have Israel Adesanya. Right now, you have all the stars aligning, and then this virus happens and it's put all these sports on hold. But this is really unique position for the UFC because it looks like Dana White recognizes this opportunity as okay, everything else is put on hold, and he's doing his best to make sure the UFC events still continue. Do you think this is a real opportunity to continue to grow this sport just vastly for the UFC? And there may not be people in the crowds, but I think he still wants to put the fights on. So that being said, do you see this as a huge opportunity for MMA?
This is a huge opportunity for MMA. And I
Right.
almost think like Dana canceling the next 3 shows and focusing on making sure that Tony and Khabib happens is a huge statement that he's making. They're like, because that fight is going to be great because
Yes.
Tony Ferguson's always like Khabib can sometimes he could put on a controlling fight that may not be the most exciting fight, but Tony
Right.
Ferguson will not allow that to happen.
No.
So I think in the best interest of MMA and the UFC in particular is that fight happens with nothing else going on. Everybody's going to watch it, and then Dana stacks the undercard with the most exciting guys he can find.
Right.
Get Nico Price. Find the most. They don't have to be the best fighters. It don't have to be for the rankings, but just get the most exciting guys that he can find, or the
Right.
most devastating finishers that he can find. Find Francis Ngannou an opponent. So some guy. Yeah. So find the most devastating finishers because this is a mega opportunity for them.
Right. I was about to say now everyone just wants to see sports. Like I think people who don't even like baseball are going to watch baseball or soccer. Like the ratings are going to go through the roof. And now with the UFC being the only sport that could possibly be displayed, I feel like this is getting like back to your point. This is just the spotlight's on the UFC, and I think Dana White understands that, and this is going to be huge for the sport.
It's a great opportunity for Dana because as a UFC, like it's really 3 guys you're dealing with, 2 fighters
Right.
and a referee. Everybody else can be separated. You don't need to have a lot of people around. I
Yeah.
mean, you could probably film it with cameras set up and drones. I mean, it's the perfect opportunity, and
Right.
you don't have to really break a lot of the rules that we have in place right now, as far as like shelter in place, or what are the quarantine. So it's
Right.
great.
Now, before I dive into that, because you brought it up, the Khabib Tony, I want to get your breakdown on that. Very quickly. I just, for one, just make sure these guys stay healthy in quarantine and are training because I cannot get this fight canceled again. Selfishly, it's just I cannot. I think this is probably the most anticipated MMA match in a very long time. Do you think? Because this has been a topic with the NBA. If the NBA returns, people are like, okay, even if it is the postseason, can we play without fans? And some players are like, no, I can't. And I just want to see basketball. I think anyone at this point would just enjoy it even without fans. For you, do you think that affects the fight if it takes place that there is no one in the fans?
It will a little bit, but I think it'll actually be better for the fighters because then
Oh,
we'll see what they're really made of. Because
okay.
a lot of times, fighters will go out there and they're so affected by the fans that they don't
Right.
put on the best performances. They're just nervous. You'll see fighters get nervous backstage, and there will still be that element of nerves that they have to deal with because of the magnitude of the fight itself. But they're
Right.
not dealing with the energy of the fans, and we're going to see better performances and more chances being taken from these guys. So I think that helps. And also, I think that from a judging perspective, it'll be better too because you won't get the bias of whoever the fans want to win.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so now that being said, the fight takes place. Let's say there's no one in the crowd. It's Tony Ferguson, it's Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it's Herb Dean in the middle. Um, How do you see this fight playing out? Because I obviously Khabib is probably the favorite because he's 28-0, 29-0. But I think Tony Ferguson presents issues that he's never dealt with. He's a guy that doesn't mind being on his back, the scrambles. He doesn't get tired. He loves to just fight. How do you see that fight playing out?
Yeah, and those are all great points, and those are things that I've said in the past about this fight that I have to reiterate and just kind of express your same sentiment. Is that I
Okay.
think that Tony possesses unique challenges that we've never seen Khabib deal with. Doesn't necessarily mean he can't deal with it, but we've
Right.
never seen him deal with it. We've never seen him deal with a guy who's comfortable on his back. We've never seen him deal with a guy who's that long and dangerous like that.
Right.
Everybody he's ever fought in terms of like Edson Barbosa, Dustin Poirier, they've all wanted to get back to their feet. Michael Johnson, they've all wanted to get back to their feet and gave up their back to do it. And Khabib is such a strong controller that it presented problems for them. But when you got a guy like Tony who just doesn't care, who's gonna be fighting, he's gonna be, even if he gives up his back, he's gonna be throwing elbows and doing Granby rolls and Petersons and everything else. So he presents a unique challenge, but I think the biggest thing that Tony presents to Tony, or that Khabib hasn't faced, is that level of durability, the durability that Tony has. He's so durable. Like you can hit him with a brick, and he's going to continue to keep coming forward. So I don't think there's anything that Khabib can do to break Tony. You can't break him mentally. So in order for Khabib to win, he's got to break him physically first, which is going to be tough to do because he's not going to be in positions to do it because Tony's
Right.
so dangerous. So the way I see the fight playing out, I see Tony losing the first 2 rounds,
Okay.
then winning the next 3 or finishing Khabib, to be honest with you.
Really? So you
Yeah.
have Tony winning regardless decision or not?
Yeah, but I think he loses the first 2 rounds. I think Khabib kind of has his way with him the first 2 rounds. I think Khabib in a 3 round fight, I think Khabib could probably win that fight. I think Khabib is a strong enough wrestler, but Khabib,
Right.
we've seen Khabib fade a little bit. And I think the fact that Tony's not going to fade and the fact that Khabib is used to breaking people, the fact that he won't break Tony is going to break him, I think.
Okay. Now that's really interesting because I actually agree with you. I've said it on my podcast. It's like people are talking about, all right, is Conor really going to want to fight Khabib next? He just won, and I'm like, this fight with Tony's not even over with yet because I think Tony's going to shock the world, and I not shock the world as in no one saw it coming because Tony is elite, but the fact that Khabib is the face of being undefeated right now, he is that now that's breaking everybody. He seems like in Rocky, where it's like, okay, you do not want to fight this guy. He just killed Apollo Creed with Drago,
Yeah,
but yeah, he just has that aura, just the way he speaks, the way he carries himself. He's intimidating. So back to your point, I can completely see that happening and Tony doing that. And honestly, I think these two will be involved with each other more than once because if Tony wins, you have to give Khabib that rematch, right? Or does that mean Conor just jumps right in and fights Tony?
well, I'll tell you this, to be honest with you, from a stylistic standpoint, I don't think Conor beats either of them, but Conor stands a better chance with Tony than he does Khabib.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Just, I don't think he could beat Tony, but he stands a better chance with Tony than he does Khabib.
Okay. No, and that's fair points. Yeah, I would agree with that because Tony does get hit, and he's not
Yeah,
looking all
yeah,
years.
he's yeah. He's not the hardest guy to hit. That's why he's so durable. But
Right.
he's going to get hit. And Khabib possesses a lot of. I mean, not Khabib, but Conor possesses a lot of. He's not a lot of power, but he's a very accurate and devastating puncher. And if he hits Tony quite a few times, he could do some damage. Maybe get it stopped or something.
Right. Now, that being said, what do you think is next for Conor? He obviously just beat Donald Cerrone, spectacular fashion. It seems like he's changed his approach to really just life in general. He's back on track. Is it Justin Gaethje? Is it Jorge Masvidal? What do you think is next for Conor? I know Jorge wants that fight, so there's just so many different pieces and variables going on.
Yeah, I mean, from a sports perspective, the Gaethje fight makes sense.
Okay.
But from an entertainment perspective, it doesn't make sense at all. So, but what is the game run on? It's run on entertainment. So I don't know if that fight's going to happen because it doesn't make sense from an entertainment perspective because Gaethje is dangerous and nobody knows who he is. You
Right.
know, so at least with Cowboy Cerrone was the perfect opponent for Conor's comeback because
He was.
everybody knows who he is and he's not that dangerous. He wasn't that dangerous to Conor.
Right.
So
Right.
the perfect opponent. Gaethje's a lot more dangerous, and nobody knows who he is. I mean, you can't even spell his last name, so like it's so like nobody really knows who he is, and nobody's going to remember him afterwards. So you
Right.
kind of don't want to have Conor fight a guy like that. There's a no. I mean, if Conor wins, then he wins. But if he loses, then it's not
Damn.
going to raise Gaethje's stock any. Not
Right.
really. So I don't know if that fight really makes sense. I think that Conor may be better off trying to get a Diaz fight,
Okay.
trying to get Nate Diaz, or wait for Masvidal to see if he can beat Usman, or even if he loses to Usman. I mean, that fight makes sense because everybody knows who Masvidal is. So maybe wait for Masvidal. But like I said, from a sports perspective, the Gaethje fight makes sense because Gaethje's earned it. But from an entertainment perspective,
Right.
nobody's going to care about it.
Okay. Lastly, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy dude, so you just brought it up. Jorge Masvidal, Kamaru Usman. That I cannot wait for this fight. This is like the classic styles make matchups, styles make fights. Obviously, Jorge Masvidal is more gifted on the feet. Usman's at constant pressure, very strong, great wrestling grinder. He has some power on his feet as well. Um, how do you see that going out? Who can implement their game plan and their style more?
Yeah, that's such a crazy fight to call because when I trained Tyron Woodley for Usman, and you
Yeah.
know I, and I expected Tyron to win, and granted Tyron didn't show up, but Usman still put on the performance of a lifetime. I mean, Usman's looked great. He looked great, and Usman's never really looked bad. I mean, you've never really seen him lose around.
Right.
He may have lost around the Colby, so it's hard to really pick against him because he's so dominant. He's such a force to be reckoned with. But in terms of skill, like overall skill, I've been around Masvidal for the longest time. and he's
Okay.
always been the best guy in the room. Like he's the like when you like break down each skill set, he's the best boxer. You know, he was like the best wrestler. He's the best. So he's so good at these things. But sometimes he gets a bit lazy in fights, which is why he was the king of losing close decisions because he would get lazy. You
Hmm.
can't get lazy against a guy like Usman.
No.
You know, you can't fight him lazy at all. You got to be one step ahead of him. You got to push him backwards. Um, but so I can't really make a prediction on that fight because I can see it going many different ways. I mean,
Okay.
I think if they fought 100 times, you know, Usman might win more of them. That's
No,
what I think.
right.
But in terms of that night, what happens, I think it's 50-50. Like anybody can win.
Okay. Fair enough. And just to give Masvidal credit, honestly, I haven't seen like such a quick ascension like Masvidal since McGregor. Like it
No,
seems like,
it's never been done before. No,
yeah,
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
it's never, yeah,
He went
you've
from
never.
like entertaining to now superstar. Like he's beaten the way he beat Askren, record breaking time, and then the Nate Diaz fight. The whole world, The Rock presented the belt. I never thought I'd
Yeah,
see that in the octagon. I'm like, this guy is a superstar quicker than I could even remember.
I mean, it might have been the best year that any MMA fighter has ever had. I mean, you
Yeah,
talk about that, and then he coined three piece with a soda, punching Leon Edwards in the back after knocking out Darren Till. Then he, then he up Nate Diaz and gets the BMF belt. I mean, it's the best year any MMA fighter has ever had. But he's earned it. Honestly, like I said, he's earned it, man. I've been around him for a long time, and he's always been a dog. He's a dog in the room. He's still a dog in the room. Like the money hasn't changed him. He's
okay.
still a dog in the room. He still comes in, you know, wearing basketball shorts and smelling like weed. So like he's still the same guy.
Well, man, I appreciate you, Dean, Mr. Dean Thomas. I really appreciate your time. Where can people find you on social media? What's coming up next for you? The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the floor. But everybody can find me on Instagram, Twitter. It's all the same at Dean
Okay.
Thomas. Dean spelled Din Thomas. So at Dean Thomas. And the only thing I got going on now is I'm coming up with a new online project. Should be out within the next 2 months called my MMA Manifesto, in which it's my online course. It's pretty much going to encompass everything that I know about fighting. So, if,
Awesome.
yeah. So if you are a fight fan, you know, you train, you want to be a fighter, pick it up. I'm telling you, I'm laying everything out.
Wow, that's incredible. So yeah, whenever that project is finished, let me know. And you already got a spot on here. I'll be blasting it. So I
Thank you,
cannot wait to
man.
check it out. Yeah, of
Perfect,
course.
man.
Dean, I appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. You're always welcome on the podcast.
Okay, my man. Take it easy.